The moment my son peeled back the silver paper, I knew something was wrong. His little hands paused. His face lit up for a second, then froze. Inside the gift bag was not the Lego police station I had saved for all month. It was a resealed pouch of bacon, flavored dog treats. The label read, "For Superboys only, bark twice to open." There was a beat of silence. Then my sister, Trina, burst into laughter. "Oh my God! His face!" she squealed. "It's just a prank." My mother giggled behind her wine glass. My father muttered, "Kids these days are so soft." I looked at my son. Caleb's eyes were wide. He turned to me, lower lip trembling. "Mom, did I do something wrong?" The room spun. I saw my own gift, a simple blue box with hand-drawn wrapping, shoved to the side of the table. No one had even opened it. I thought she was joking. I whispered to myself, but no one corrected her. No one said it was too far. They all just stood there, laughing. At my son. At me. I reached for Caleb and pulled him close. He didn't cry. Not right away. He just sank into my side like someone trying to disappear. I scanned the room. My parents. My sister. Her friends, filming with their phones. No one looked ashamed. They looked amused. The candles were still burning on the cupcake tray I made that morning. A single balloon bobbed near the ceiling. All that planning, all that saving, just to give him a day he would remember. And they turned it into this. I grabbed my bag, took Caleb's hand, and walked out. No one stopped us. Later that night, I found him curled up on the couch, still wearing his party crown. He whispered, "Maybe I don't need birthdays anymore." And something broke in me. Not loud, not messy, but final. I didn't sleep. I just sat there, holding his forgotten gift in my lap. And I made a decision. One they would never see coming. Because this wasn't just a prank. This was the last time they got to humiliate my child and get away with it. Would you forgive the joke? Or protect your child no matter the cost? Where are you listening from? Have you ever had to walk away from your own family? The next morning, I found dog treat crumbs on Caleb's jacket. They were pressed into the zipper. Little greasy flakes stuck near his chest. Right where he'd held that gift bag so carefully. I brushed them away with the side of my palm, then just stood there staring. It was cold in the apartment that morning. Colder than usual. I could hear the radiator ticking in the hallway, but it felt like the heat never quite reached us. Our two-bedroom rental always shrank after my family came around. The silence after they left felt louder than any noise they ever brought in. I moved to the kitchen, turned the kettle on, and stood by the stove in my old gray robe. The one with a worn pocket and loose sleeve seam I never bothered to fix. The counter was still dusted in powdered sugar and flour. I'd stayed up past midnight frosting cupcakes. Blue swirl, Caleb's favorite color. Vanilla sponge, just soft enough to fall apart on your tongue. He never even touched one. I heard the soft creak of his door. Tiny feet padding across the old hardwood floor. He walked in silent and climbed up onto one of the chairs. The paper crown from yesterday was still on his head, crumpled, hanging off his ear. "Do I still get my real present?" he asked, barely above a whisper. I nodded. I'd left it on the table, wrapped in blue paper with a silver ribbon. Nothing fancy. Just something I thought would make him smile. He peeled it open slowly, like he was afraid of what might be inside, and when he saw it, the Ligio police station said he'd circled in the catalog weeks ago. He blinked, then looked up. "Thanks, Mom." No laugh, no sparkle in his eyes. Just a quiet, steady, thanks. And that broke something in me more than if he had cried. At work on Monday, I went through the motions. Logged into my inbox. Answered emails. Sat through a budgeting call I don't remember a word of. Everything felt dulled. Dana, the office assistant, leaned over the cubicle wall around noon. "You good? You look like you got hit by a truck." I half laughed. "Family party this weekend." She paused, then nodded. "I've been to those kinds of parties." And somehow, that felt more comforting than anything else. That night, while Caleb sat at the kitchen table assembling his luck ego with careful focus, I sat on the couch and opened the family group chat. There were photos. Trina in her new ivory blazer. Trina holding the dog treat bag like a trophy. Mom mid-toast with a wine glass captioned, "Tradition never dies." No mention of Caleb. No questions about why we'd left. No acknowledgement that we were even gone. I stared at the screen for a moment, then closed it. Deleted the thread, and for the first time in a long time, after tucking Caleb into bed, I went to the corner of the living room where my small desk sat. It wasn't fancy, just an IKEA hand, me down with one drawer that always stuck when it rained. I opened the folder I kept for anything important: school forms, lease copies, pay stubs, the energy bill, scribbled reminders about PTO days. Then I saw it. A worn, creased envelope with my sister's handwriting on it. Trina had left it in my car 3 months ago when I drove her to an emergency facial appointment because the spa didn't have valet and I can't walk in heels. She never came back for it. I'd forgotten it existed. I opened it. Inside was a printed pitch deck. Trina & Co. Wellness, a family-centered lifestyle brand. It had logos, mission statements, Instagram mood boards, even a headshot, mine, cropped from my old LinkedIn profile. The bio read, Operations Manager, Financial Planner, and co-founder with a background in data systems and HR. It wasn't even spelled correctly. At the end were 3 filled-out documents: a local business grant application, a private funding request, and a bank loan form for $35,000. Filed under my name. With my tax ID, my signature, forged, my phone number, altered by 1 digit. I sat back slowly, let the paper fall onto my lap, stared at the ceiling. There was no rage. Just stillness. Like that moment after a storm, when everything is so quiet, you almost forget what came before it. I thought about Caleb. About the way his hands shook when he unwrapped that joke gift. About the way my parents had laughed. About the way no one called. Not even afterward. They always said I was the dramatic one. Sensitive. Overreacting. But I was also the one they always came to when bills were due. When someone needed a ride. When Trina needed a name on a lease. A signature. A cosigner. I stood up, went to the sink and started washing the cups from dinner, one by one. No music, no rush. Just me, the scent of lemon dish soap, and the hum of the fridge. I wasn't scrubbing plates. I was washing away the years I spent thinking silence was strength. That if I endured long enough, they would change. That kindness would earn me respect. Caleb came into the kitchen again. Barefoot, in his fleece pajamas with the faded fire truck print. He looked up at me with sleepy eyes and asked, "Are we still part of the family?" I dried my hands. Bent down. "We're the best part." He didn't say anything. Just wrapped his arms around my waist and rested his cheek against my hip. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch long after he went to bed. The TV was on mute. The city lights flickered against the blinds. I pulled the loan form back out. Held it in my hands. And I made a decision. They'd never see it coming. Tuesday morning. Caleb didn't want to get dressed for school. He sat on the edge of his bed, knees pulled into his chest, his Spider-Man socks limp in his hands. "Is it okay if I skip today?" he mumbled. "We're making birthday cards in class." "I don't want to." My heart dropped. He'd been talking about that class activity all month. I told Miss Larkin mine would have a Minecraft creeper. But what if someone saw that video? I swallowed hard. No one's sharing that, baby. That was just family. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure it was true. I knelt down beside him. Do you trust me? He nodded, slowly. Then let's go. Just today. We'll figure out tomorrow later. At drop-off, I noticed two moms whispering by the gate. They didn't look at me, but I felt it. That flicker of pity. Or judgment. Or both. Caleb walked in with his backpack a little heavier on one side. He insisted on bringing the Lego box with him, just to look at during free time. I watched him walk inside and told myself it was just one bad day. Just one. But when I got back in the car, my hand stayed frozen on the steering wheel for a long time. That afternoon, Trina posted a reel. Her page was public. She had over 14,000 followers. The caption read, "Family pranks keep us young, fan savagant, fen just for laughs." It had 3 cuts. One of Caleb opening the gift, one of her laughing, and one freeze, frame of my face, stunned, in the background. The comments flooded in. LMAO savage! Kids need to toughen up these days. Can't believe the mom looks mad. It's a joke. I clicked through her likes. My mother had tapped it. So had my dad. Even my cousin, the one who'd missed the party because of church, had commented. Classic Trina. I'd cry too if my aunt roasted me that hard. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I just turned off my phone, slid it under the couch cushion, and sat there for a long time with my hands folded. It wasn't about the dog treats. It was about being erased, first from the party, now from the story. They had taken a moment that humiliated my son and turned it into a joke. For clicks, for applause, and no one had my back. Not even one person said, "Hey, maybe that was too far." That evening, I ran into a friend from work at Trader Joe's. Her name was Mel. She was in HR. We'd shared the same lunchtime microwave for 5 years. She smiled politely, but her eyes scanned me, like she was looking for a way not to ask what she already knew. "You doing okay?" I nodded. Then added, "Saw a funny video lately." She hesitated. Then, to her credit, said softly, "I'm sorry." I didn't think she'd actually post it. That was the first time I heard it out loud. That people were watching. Not just my family. Strangers, neighbors, colleagues. Watching a little boy open dog food on his birthday, while his mom stood frozen. When I picked Caleb up from school, he was quiet again. More quiet than usual. He looked out the window and said, "They made fun of my crown." What crown? The one from the party. I put it in my cubby for show and tell. Someone said it looked like a dog toy. I couldn't speak. I just reached over and touched his hand. We stopped for ice cream. It was too cold for it, but he wanted the blue swirl. I let him get 2 scoops. I didn't eat mine. I just watched him eat. The way his jaw clenched tighter than it used to. He was 8. But something in his face looked older. That night, I reopened Trina's video. I watched it again, this time without sound. Just the visuals. Caleb opening the bag, his eyes lighting up, then dimming. The frame paused right as he looked up for reassurance. I remembered how heavy he'd felt in my arms when I carried him out. How his chin had been sticky with frosting. How my parents didn't even turn their heads. They'd stayed. They kept partying. The message was clear. He was expendable and so was I. I opened a blank note on my phone. Type D. Date of party January 14. Video posted January 16. Number of views by January 18, 68,000. Form found in car September 28. Loan amount 35,000. Fake email trinacareers@gmail.com. Signature does not match mine. Then I saved it. No title. No folder. Just a place to keep track. I didn't know what I would do with it yet, but it felt like the first time in weeks that something was in my hands, not theirs. Around midnight I heard Caleb get up. I found him in the hallway, sitting on the floor outside his bedroom, holding the Lego box. He looked up, eyes wide. "Can I sleep with it?" I nodded. "Of course." He curled up with it like a stuffed animal, and I sat by his door for another hour, listening to his breathing even out. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was done. By Friday, I had stopped opening the family group chat. But that didn't stop them from sending things. A forwarded meme about sensitive moms. A blurry selfie of Trina holding up a pink cupcake with a caption that said, "At least some kids can take a joke." I didn't reply. Didn't even read it out loud. I was too focused on the folder. The one with my name on paperwork I never signed. The more I stared at those forms, the clearer it all became. How casual it had been for her. Like I was just a tool. A shortcut. She hadn't even tried that hard to hide it. That Saturday, Caleb had a nightmare. I heard him crying before I reached the hallway. He was curled up, fists clenched around his pillow. When I woke him, he whispered. The bag was full of bugs this time. I lay with him for over an hour, tracing small circles on his back, until he drifted off again. After he slept, I sat at the kitchen table in the dark, staring at my laptop. The tabs I had open weren't about parenting or birthday ideas anymore. They were about identity theft, loan fraud, federal implications, how to prove you didn't sign something when your name is there in black ink, and more importantly, how to do it without it blowing back on your child. I booked a meeting with my bank. Not for confrontation, just for clarity. It was a Thursday afternoon. I took PTO, dressed in slacks I hadn't worn since my last interview 3 years ago, and walked into the branch holding a manila envelope and my driver's license. A woman named Emily greeted me. She had kind eyes and a no-nonsense tone I appreciated immediately. "I'm here about a business loan," I said. She smiled. "Looking to open one?" "No," I said. "I think one was opened, using me." Her expression changed. We sat down. I handed over the paperwork. She scanned each page carefully, eyes narrowing at the signature, then at the listed phone number. "This isn't your email," she said. I shook my head. "It's not even spelled right." "What about this LLC?" "Doesn't exist." Emily nodded. "This may take a few days. But you're doing the right thing by coming in now." Then she added, almost gently, "Don't let this sit too long. People like this, they don't stop unless someone makes them." When I got home, Caleb was drawing at the kitchen table. He'd made a comic strip, 4 panels. In the first, a boy opened a gift. In the second, he cried. In the third, the boy had a cape and was flying. In the last, the girl who gave him the fake gift fell into a hole. I said nothing. Just kissed his head and whispered, "Nice cape." That night I dug deeper. I looked up the business address Trina had listed. It was my apartment. She'd used my lease. She had submitted a photo of the living room, rearranged to look like a home office. The plant in the background. Mine. The notebook on the desk, Caleb's math homework. I searched my email history. There, buried in a spam folder, was a message from the Small Business Alliance thanking Heather Malone for her wellness brand initiative. Trina had never even used a fake name. She'd just borrowed my identity like it was hers to wear. Like I wouldn't notice. Like I wouldn't care. Like I didn't matter. The next day, I went to the notary public in the corner store near our apartment complex. The woman behind the counter had a soft voice and a gold cross necklace. I showed her my signature, on my ID, my work forms, and then showed her the copy from the loan. "I need a statement," I said. "A sworn affidavit that this isn't mine." She looked at me for a long time. Then asked, "Family?" "Yes." She sighed. "Don't be ashamed." You wouldn't believe how often it's family. The hardest part wasn't filing the paperwork. It was pretending nothing was wrong. At work, I nodded through meetings, answered emails, packed Caleb's lunch every morning. But everything had shifted. Every sound, every face, every comment carried weight now. When Dana offered me an extra granola bar at lunch, I nearly cried. Not because I needed it, but because someone offered me something without expecting me to pay for it later. That weekend, Trina posted a new reel. This time, it was a throwback. Remember when little C, dog got his protein surprise? There were slow motion edits, dramatic music, freeze frames of Caleb's shocked face. It had over 100,000 views in 3 days. I didn't say a word. But I printed a screenshot of the video. Then I printed her application. Then, the photo she had posted of Caleb's birthday setup. The one with the caption, "Boring cake." But at least the gift was memorable. I clipped them together and slid them into a folder. Then I slipped that folder into my desk drawer, right under our passports. I still wasn't sure what I was going to do. But I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about protection. Because if Trina could humiliate Caleb once, she could do it again. And if she could steal from me with a smile, she'd do worse if no one stopped her. She thought I was weak. That's always been her biggest mistake. The call from my mother came on a Tuesday. I let it go to voicemail. Then played it once Caleb left for school. Her voice was sugary, too sweet. The kind she used before saying something that would bruise. "Hey sweetheart, just checking in. Trina said you've been acting cold. We don't want drama, okay? It was just a little fun. No need to hold a grudge." She ended it with, "Family comes first." I sat at the kitchen table, holding the phone in both hands, heart beating slow and heavy. Family comes first, unless it's mine. Unless it's Caleb's. Unless there's a joke to be made. Unless it costs nothing. I hit delete. Then sat in silence. That night, I walked past the mirror in the hallway and did something I hadn't done in a long time. I stopped and looked at myself. Not a quick glance. Not a rushed check for mascara smudges or toothpaste on my shirt. I looked. Lines I hadn't noticed before curved around my mouth. My eyes looked tired but not weak. There was something harder there now. Not bitter. Just finished. Finished asking for space I'd already earned. Finished trying to earn respect that should have been automatic. Later, Caleb came into the living room while I folded laundry. "Why did Aunt Trina do that?" he asked. I stopped mid-fold. He was staring at me, eyes searching. "She said it was a joke." I sat on the floor beside him. "It wasn't funny to you, was it?" He shook his head. "Did I do something wrong?" That sentence, it ripped through me. "No," I said. "No, honey. You didn't do anything wrong. They did. But why doesn't Grandma think so?" I took a breath. How do you explain grown-up cruelty to an 8-year-old? "I don't know," I said softly. Sometimes people laugh at the wrong things, and sometimes they're too proud to admit they hurt someone. He nodded slowly, then whispered, "I don't want to see them again." I pulled him into my lap. "You don't have to." After he went to bed, I sat in the laundry room. Not folding. Not cleaning. Just sitting. I thought about every time I'd kept the peace. Every birthday where Trina made it about herself. Every phone call from my mother where apologies came wrapped in accusations. I had spent so many years performing forgiveness. And where had it left me? Alone on a child's birthday, cleaning frosting off his chin while my family posted reels for likes. This was my bottom. Not because I was angry, but because I was empty. And that emptiness, it was freedom. 2 days later, Dana from work handed me a sticky note. "You dropped this in the break room." It wasn't mine. But it had a quote on it in blue ink. Silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes, it's preparation. She winked. And for a moment, I almost believed I could rise. I opened my laptop that night and created a new folder. I labeled it, Caleb Future. Inside, I saved PDFs of the fraud forms, screenshots of the videos, a copy of the notary's affidavit, and a letter I hadn't sent, addressed to Trina. In it, I wrote, "You stole my name. You humiliated my son. You used my trust like a coupon code. And you think you'll walk away clean." Then I paused and added, "But I'm not angry anymore. I'm awake." I didn't send it, but it felt like armor anyway. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. A text from my dad. "Heard you're going around causing problems. This is family. Trina's your sister. Don't be spiteful." I stared at it, then typed back, "She isn't Caleb's," and blocked him. No drama, no explanation, just distance. That weekend, Caleb and I planted herbs on the windowsill. Basil, mint, a little rosemary. He wrote labels in shaky green marker. At one point, he looked up and asked, "Are we okay now?" I smiled. "We're getting there." He leaned his head against my arm and whispered, "I like it when it's quiet." So did I. Quiet didn't mean nothing was happening. It meant I was making space. For growth. For safety. For something that didn't include people who laughed when a child cried. I started waking up before the sun. Not because I had to, but because it was the only time the apartment felt completely mine. While Caleb slept, the world paused. And in that pause, I began to build. Each morning, I set a timer for 40 minutes. No distractions, no excuses, just quiet. One tab for my notes. One for the fraud report I hadn't submitted yet. One for the school calendar so I wouldn't miss anything important for Caleb. The rest of my screen stayed blank. I made coffee in my old French press, the glass chipped near the handle, poured it into the "World's okayest mom" mug Caleb gave me 2 years ago. Then I got to work. I wasn't trying to ruin anyone. I was trying to reclaim what was mine. My name. My story. My child's safety. I filed a fraud alert with the IRS. I emailed the Better Business Bureau and requested a printed complaint history for the fake LLC Trina used. They replied within 48 hours. 3 complaints. None resolved. All linked to her fake wellness startup. She hadn't just stolen from me. She had hurt other people too. That Saturday, Caleb had a classmate over. Liam, a shy boy with glasses and a love for Pokémon. They sat on the living room rug, trading cards. For the first time in weeks, Caleb laughed without hesitation. Not a forced giggle. A full, head-back teeth, showing kind of laugh. I stood at the doorway, quietly watching. Liam's mom, Maria, joined me. She smiled, holding a cup of chamomile tea. "I don't know what you're doing," she said, "but your son, he looks safe." That word stayed with me. Safe. Not happy. Not lucky. Not easy. Safe. That night, I called my friend Lena, a paralegal I hadn't spoken to in nearly a year. She had moved to another state after her divorce, but we'd always kept a thread of connection alive. "Lena," I said, after we caught up, "I need advice, off the record." I told her everything. The forged loan, the video, the silence. The way it all kept piling on while no one blinked. When I finished, there was a pause. Then she said, "I don't think you're just reclaiming something. I think you're building a wall. A legal one." She walked me through what I'd need: a timeline. Documentation. Any patterns that show harm. Proof of damages. Emotional, reputational, financial. I already had most of it. I just needed to organize it. So I did. 3 nights in a row, I stayed up after Caleb went to sleep, categorizing every document. One folder labeled misuse of identity. One labeled public humiliation, minor. And a third, negligent family response. I wasn't being petty. I was being thorough. Because if they came back, if they dared accuse me of overreacting again, I wouldn't have words. I'd have proof. By Wednesday, I had a meeting scheduled with a legal aid center. They didn't handle criminal law, but they could help with documentation and next steps. When I told the woman on the phone about the child humiliation angle, she got quiet. Then said, "Come in. Bring everything." At work, I kept my head down. I smiled when expected. Answered emails on time. Attended the quarterly performance review like my world wasn't burning quietly beneath my desk. Dana handed me a coffee after the meeting. No words, just a nod. I think she knew. The next surprise came on Thursday. A letter from the small business bank. Not a warning. A thank you note. Apparently, Trina had listed my address for tax returns. Inside the envelope was a copy of the quarterly statement, under my name. The balance was low, but the damage was deeper. She had made 2 vendor payments using my name. One to a printing company. One to a branding consultant. Both listed her email, but my full legal ID. I added it to the stack, and that was the moment something in me clicked. This wasn't a sibling fight. This was a pattern. This was calculated. This was theft wrapped in a family discount. And I was done giving them coupons. Caleb noticed I was quieter than usual that night. He leaned against me during a movie and said, "Are you sad again?" I shook my head. "No, baby. I'm just thinking." "About what?" I smiled. "About fixing things." On Friday, I stood in line at the courthouse annex with a folder and a stiff back. I wasn't filing a suit. Not yet. I just needed one document certified. A statement affirming I had never opened, operated, or profited from Trina's company. The clerk didn't even blink. "Another one," she muttered. I looked at her. She raised her eyebrows. "We see this more than you'd think. Families, right?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. That weekend, I took Caleb to a community book fair. He picked out a comic and a used paperback called How to Be a Detective. As we walked out, he said, "Can we solve something together?" I smiled. "We already are." I began drafting one final document. Not legal. Not formal. A timeline of what they did. Of what I did in return. No exaggeration. Just truth. I saved it under the file name. If they come back. Because they would. People like them always do. And next time I wouldn't freeze. I wouldn't explain. I'd press print. And hand them the receipt. Have you ever had to protect your child from your own family? Or stood up quietly when no one thought you would? Tell me below. You're not alone. Sometimes silence isn't surrender. It's strategy. Subscribe to EN Reddit Story for more true stories of justice, closure, and empowerment after 40. I mailed the envelope on a Wednesday morning. Pale blue, no return address, just a small typed label. Eric Whitley and family private. Inside, a screen grab from the birthday party video. A printout of the bank loan paperwork with Trina's forged signature. A single sentence in clean font. You deserve to know who you're inviting into your family. Then I dropped it into the mailbox across from Caleb's school, next to the jungle gym. While he played tag in the January sun, I didn't shake. I didn't hesitate. It felt like mailing off a version of myself I no longer needed. Eric was Trina's fiancé. We'd never met formally, but I knew his last name from a tag on one of her Instagram engagement reels. Real estate finance. Old money. A mother with tight pearls and tighter boundaries. I didn't expect them to reply. But I knew they'd read it, and I knew Trina couldn't spin it fast enough. She had spent months crafting a persona. A glossy, curated version of herself where she was a founder, an emotional intelligence speaker, a philanthropist who hosted vision board brunches and gave talks about resilience through femininity. But behind that brand was a lie built on my name, my signature, my child's pain. And it was time that lie met a wall. A week later, Trina's engagement brunch was scheduled, held at the Briarstone, a glass, paneled event hall just outside the city with koi ponds, string quartets, and a no-jeans policy. She had posted about it endlessly. Biggest day of my life coming up. Can't wait to welcome the Whitleys into the most loving family ever. She meant my family. The one that never called. The one that never showed up when Caleb cried. I debated showing up. But I didn't need a scene. I didn't need to be in the room when the curtain dropped. I just needed the spotlight to hit her without warning. Instead, I went to a library. I sat at a corner table with my laptop and sipped lukewarm tea while tracking hashtags tied to the event. There were a few early posts. Napkin shots, champagne glasses, ah, love is in the air, story tagged at Briarstone. Then silence. An hour passed. Then two. Then one blurry upload from someone's story. Trina standing alone by the fountain, holding her phone, dress pristine, eyes wide. No guests in sight. I didn't smile. But I felt clean. Like I had stepped out of someone else's story and back into my own. The next morning, my phone buzzed. 7 missed calls. 3 voicemails. All from Trina. I didn't listen. She finally texted. You're sick. You sabotaged me. Hope your sad little life was worth it. I didn't reply. Instead, I went to the kitchen and made pancakes shaped like stars. Caleb sprinkled powdered sugar with both hands, grinning. Are we celebrating something? He asked. I kissed the top of his head. We are now. But Trina wasn't finished. The following Tuesday, a manila envelope was slipped under my apartment door. Inside, a cease and desist letter drafted by a private attorney, a claim that I caused emotional sabotage and reputational harm. It was laughable, and also incredibly on brand. She hadn't denied the fraud. She was just angry she'd been interrupted. I called Lena. She laughed over the phone. Please, that letter's fluff. She has no grounds. If she tries to file, we counterclaim. Then added, she poked the wrong woman. I exhaled. The kind of breath that clears decades of held-in apologies. I forwarded the document to the local fraud division. Along with every bank form, email trail, and screenshot I had. I didn't yell, didn't post, didn't warn her. I just submitted. Silently. Thoroughly. Then I reached out to one last person. Her name was Rachel. She ran the small school where Trina had recently applied for a part-time counseling job. I'd seen the post on Trina's social feed. Can't wait to mentor young minds. New beginnings. I emailed Rachel a short note. Before hiring, please consider this footage. No accusation. Just a link. 1 minute. Audio only. Trina's voice laughing. It's just dog food. He'll get over it. My mother's voice chiming in. Film it. This is gold. The next day, the job listing quietly disappeared. Trina showed up outside my office the following week. Not inside, not loud, but waiting. Red-eyed, breathless, rage beneath a trembling voice. You've destroyed me, she hissed. I said nothing. Security stepped in. The guard on duty. Miss Helen's nephew. The baker from town who remembered Caleb's tears. He walked Trina to the curb and left her with one line. You mess with a child, don't act surprised when doors close for good. I didn't feel victorious. Just finished. A week later, Caleb and I painted birdhouses in the park. Mine was crooked. His had too much glitter. He didn't care. Neither did I. He asked. Is the bad stuff gone now? I nodded. Most of it. Good, he said. Then can we build something new? Yes, I thought. We already are. The letter came from the bank first. A certified envelope, crisp and official. Inside was a single-page notification. Formal investigation concluded. Client Heather Malone not responsible. Loan fraud determined. Accounts frozen pending legal review. I read it twice. Then again. There was no apology, no warmth. Just facts. And for the first time in months, facts were finally on my side. I didn't frame it. Didn't post it. Just folded it carefully and placed it in my folder. Under resolution. A week later, I got a call from a lawyer representing one of Trina's vendors. She had used my name to order branded items for her business. The vendor wanted payment. I forwarded everything I had, including my notarized affidavit. By the end of the day, they emailed me back. Understood. Liability reversed. Thank you for your transparency. One by one, the loose threads Trina had knotted with my name began to unravel. And every time they called her, she had to explain. Not me. My parents didn't call, didn't message. But I knew they knew. How? Because I got a letter. A real one. From my mother, folded in half, handwritten in her tight cursive. Inside was a birthday card for Caleb. A crumpled $5 bill. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just a line at the bottom. You're still family. Don't punish us forever. I stared at that sentence for a long time. 5 words that said everything. Not sorry, not wrong, just inconvenienced. Still trying to make me the emotional one. The problem, the divider. I put the card on the counter. Left it there for a day. Then Caleb found it. He read it. Looked at me. Then slowly ripped it in half. Do we still get pizza today? He asked. I smiled. With extra cheese. Later that week, I ran into Miss Helen, the bakery owner who had seen the original video of Caleb's birthday. She didn't say much, just placed a small box in my hands. Inside was a cupcake. Vanilla. Blue frosting. A tiny fondant heart on top. She said, for the boy who deserved better. And then, for the mother who didn't let it slide. I stood in the middle of the sidewalk, blinking back tears, not from grief, from recognition. Someone had seen, and stayed. News traveled. Quietly, naturally. People began pulling away from Trina. The vendor dropped her engagement page disappeared. The Whitleys. Silent. She deleted her social media entirely within 2 weeks. Changed her number. Rumor had it she moved in with a distant cousin 3 towns over. Took a job at a discount home store she once mocked for. Smelling like old plastic. I didn't care. I didn't gloat. I didn't even tell Caleb. Because it wasn't about her anymore. It never really was. This was about the moment I realized I didn't owe them silence anymore. I didn't need to be the bigger person. If it meant shrinking myself to fit their comfort. I didn't need to protect people who harmed me. Just because we shared blood. I spent a weekend printing and organizing all my documents into a final binder. I labeled it, Legacy for Caleb. I didn't plan to give it to him now. Maybe not for years. But one day, he'd ask. One day, he'd wonder why the family disappeared. Why birthdays looked different. Why we celebrated smaller, quieter, but happier. And I'd hand him this binder. So he'd know. His mother didn't explode. She didn't scream. She didn't fight dirty. She just decided enough was enough, and acted accordingly. 3 months passed, no more calls, no more letters. Trina was quiet. My parents, background noise. Caleb stopped asking. His laughter returned in full. He invited 2 new friends over. They built a fort in the living room and made a "No adults allowed" sign on the front. I brought them popcorn anyway. One of them asked, "What's your mom like?" Caleb answered without hesitation, "She's strong." And that was the real fallout. Not the lost brunch. Not the deleted reels. Not the frozen accounts. But the realization that they no longer had access to define me. To edit my story. To twist what happened into Just a joke. Caleb knew. I knew. And that was enough. Spring came quietly that year. The trees outside our apartment bloomed slower than usual, as if unsure if the cold had truly gone. But each morning, Caleb would run to the window to check. "More pink flowers today, Mom," he'd say, face glowing with small certainty. We didn't talk about the party anymore. Not because we forgot, but because it no longer needed space. Pain shrinks when it isn't fed. I planted basil and rosemary on the windowsill again. Same small ceramic pots. Same marker labels in Caleb's uneven handwriting. He added a new one this time. A pot with nothing in it yet. When I asked why, he shrugged. For whatever comes next. One Saturday, we went to the library just like before. But this time, Caleb didn't stick close. He wandered off to the nonfiction section, found a book about rockets, and told the librarian he was building something big. I sat by the window with my coffee and let the moment sink in. No fear, no whispers behind my back, no eyes judging the tired woman with a quiet child. Just peace. That used to feel like a luxury. Now it feels like something I carved out with both hands. That night, I pulled the binder out one last time, the one labeled Legacy for Caleb. I flipped through the pages. Fraud documents. Screenshots. Affidavits. Photos of the cupcakes that never got eaten. A copy of the receipt from Miss Helen's bakery. The day we had our own party, just the two of us. I added one last page. A photo. Caleb, standing outside our building, holding a small wooden birdhouse. Glitter everywhere. Smile wide. Caption in my handwriting. He grew. So did I. Then I closed it, taped the edge, and slid it into the back of my closet, behind my winter coats. He'd find it someday. Maybe when I'm gone. Maybe when someone else tries to rewrite the truth. And he'll know. She didn't let it go, she handled it. With grace. With evidence. With strength. I haven't spoken to my parents. They haven't tried. But now and then, I still see their number flash across the screen. I don't block them. That would feel too loud. Instead, I let the silence answer for me. Silence that says, "You had your chance. And you wasted it." Sometimes I wonder if Trina still tells people her version of the story, if she blames me, if she cries about a ruined engagement or an ungrateful sister. I don't care. Because I know who I am, and Caleb knows who raised him. You can't rewrite that. Not with edits, not with filters, not even with dog treats. This year, for his birthday, Caleb asked for something simple. Just cake, and maybe 5 friends. No big themes, no decorations, no Aunt Trina, no cameras. Just real frosting. Real people. And real love. We threw the party in the backyard of Miss Helen's bakery. She'd hung paper lanterns and let the kids decorate cookies. Caleb wore the same crooked paper crown. But this time, he laughed as it fell off his head mid-song. When we cut the cake, he leaned in close to me and whispered, "This one's mine, right?" I nodded. "All yours, sweetheart." Later that night, after the last guest left, we sat on the porch. The air smelled like sugar and night-blooming jasmine. Caleb leaned against my shoulder. "I think we're okay now," he said, then paused. "Actually, I think we're kind of awesome." I laughed. "Yes, we are. The legacy I leave him isn't money. It isn't a perfect family. It's knowing that when the people who should protect you don't, you can still protect yourself. Quietly. Powerfully. Without yelling. Without begging. Without losing who you are. And maybe one day, when he becomes a man, he'll remember that. He'll remember that justice doesn't always look like courtrooms or confessions. Sometimes, it looks like walking away with your head held high, and never looking back. If you've ever had to rebuild your piece by piece, tell me below. You're not alone. This community sees you, and your story matters. You are not what they did. You are what you chose next. Subscribe to EN Reddit Story for more real stories of justice, closure, and empowerment after 40.